Hello, ladies and gentlemen, this is Mrs. Gallagher, and today we're going to discuss simplifying algebraic expressions, also known as combining like terms. There's some key vocabulary terms that we need to know first before we start simplifying algebraic expressions. The first one is expression. An expression has no equal sign. It is to be evaluated. So an expression has no equal sign. It is to be evaluated. And we have some examples of expressions. So an example would be something like 4 times x plus 6. Okay, this is a distributed property. There's no equal sign, and it's an expression that needs to be evaluated. Another example would be 6x plus 8 plus x. Again, there's no equal sign there. It's to be evaluated. Our next vocabulary term is the word term. And a term is a number, variable, or a product of numbers and variables. So a term is a number, variable, or a product of numbers and variables. So for example, a term could be any number, such as 8 or -7, any number. It's also a variable, like x and y. Those are variables. And it's also a product of numbers and variables. So something like 4x or 9xy. Those are all examples of terms. Our next vocabulary term that we should know is a coefficient. And the coefficient is the number before the variable. So a coefficient is the number before the variable. So for example, if I have something like 4x, our coefficient is the number before the variable. So our coefficient is 4. If I had something like 8y, our coefficient is the number before the variable. So my coefficient would be 8. Our next term would be constant. And a constant is a number. So a constant is a number. For example, 1 is a constant. It's a number. 5 is a number. 10 is a number. Okay. This also includes negative numbers, such as -6, -8. Okay. Constants are all numbers. Our last vocabulary term we should know are like terms. And like terms are terms that contain the same term or variable. So it's terms that contain the same term or variable. So for example, 6 and 4 will be like terms. If I have 6 and I add it to 4, you can combine them together. They're like terms and they give us 10. Another like term is something like 8x plus 2x. You can combine those terms together and simplify, and that will give us 10x. These are like terms. They contain the same term or variable. They both have x here. Okay, so let's now identify the coefficient, terms, and constants like terms for each expression. So let's look at our directions. It says identify the coefficient, terms, constants, and like terms for each expression. So our first one says coefficient. Remember now, a coefficient is a number before a variable. So let's look at our variables here. So here's a variable, and here's a variable. So the coefficient is a number in front of the variable. So our coefficient is 2. So our first coefficient is 2. And we have x, remember there's an imaginary number in front of that x, which is 1, because we have 1x. So our coefficient is 2 and 1. Next is our terms. And if you remember, a term is a number, variable, or product of numbers and variables. So our first term is 2x. 2x. Our second term is 8. It's just a number. Our third term is x. And our fourth term is 3. So each piece of this expression is a term. Our next is our constants, and our constants are our numbers. We have two numbers here, 8 and 3. So our constants are 8 and 3. Lastly, we want to identify our like terms. So these are the similar terms in this expression. Our first similar term, or our first term, is 2x. Are there any other x's here? Yes, x. So our first like term is 2x and x. Our second like terms are our numbers, which are 8 and 3. So our second like term is 8 and 3. Let's look at our next example. Example 2, negative 3x plus 5 plus 2x minus 6. So first we want to identify our coefficients. Our coefficient is a number in front of our variable. So we have two coefficients. They are negative 3 and 2. Our second identification is the terms. And each piece of this expression is a term. So our terms are negative 3x, 5, 2x, and negative 6. Notice we're bringing the sign in front when we indicate our terms. So now let's identify our constants. Remember, your constants are your numbers. So in the expression, our constant would be a positive 5 and a negative 6. So we're going to write 5 and negative 6. Again, remember to bring the sign in front. And lastly, our like terms. What are our like terms in this problem? Well, our x values, our variables, are negative 3x and a positive 2x. So that's our first like term, negative 3x and 2x. And then our last like term are your numbers, 5 and negative 6. So 5 and negative 6. So now what I'd like you to do is a huge trisection, and we will discuss it in class. Now let's do some examples on how to simplify an algebraic expression. So now let's look at some problems where we have to simplify each expression. Let's look at number 1, 2x plus 8x. So you first want to identify your like terms. So we have a positive 2x and a positive 8x. So now you're going to add them. 2x plus 8x gives us 10x. So our answer is going to be positive 10x. And that is your answer. Let's look at number 2. 6n plus 3 plus n. So let's first circle our variables. We have 6n and positive n. And then we have a constant, which is just 3. So now let's combine our variables. 6n plus, remember there's a 1 in front of that n. That's going to give us 7n. And we just have one constant, which is plus 3. So our answer is going to be 7n plus 3. And that is your answer. Let's look at number 3. 3x minus 5 minus 8x plus 6. So let's identify our variables. We have 3x minus 8x. And then minus 5 plus 6 are our constants, or like terms. So now 3x minus 8x, different signs, subtract, keep a sign of the higher number. So 8 minus 3 is 5, and the higher number is 8. Therefore, we're going to take the negative sign. So we have negative 5x. And then we have negative 5 plus 6. 6 minus 5 is 1. And again, the higher number is 6. So it's plus 1. Therefore, our final answer is negative 5x plus 1. Let's look at example 4. 2x minus 5 minus 4x plus 8. Identify our like terms. 2x minus 4x. And then we have negative 5 plus 8. So 2x minus 4x is going to give us a negative 2x. And then negative 5 plus 8 gives us a positive 3. Therefore, your answer is negative 2x plus 3. So now let's look at example 5. It says 3 times x minus 4 plus 6x. So what do you notice here? We added the distributive property. So your first step is to distribute the 3 to the x and the 3 to the negative 4. So 3 times x is 3x, and 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. And then you're going to bring down that positive 6x. Your next step is to find your like terms. So we have a positive 3x and a positive 6x, our variables, and then our numbers is just a negative 12. So now combine 3x plus 6x is 9x. And again, we have one constant, so just bring down our negative 12. So our answer is 9x minus 12. Let's look at example 6. X minus 5 times x plus 9. Again, we have the distributive property. But if you notice, we have a negative 5. So when you're distributing, you're going to distribute the negative 5 to the x and the negative 5 to the 9. So let's rewrite this problem. We have x, negative 5 times x is negative 5x, and negative 5 times positive 9 is negative 45. Now I want to identify our like terms. So x and minus 5x or negative 5x are our variables. And then our constant, negative 45. Next step, x minus 5x, combine your variables. That's going to give you a negative 4x. And we only have one constant, so bring down your negative 45. So our answer is negative 4x minus 45. And that is your answer. So now I'd like you to try the you try section. Please do numbers 1, 2, and 3, and we will discuss it in class. Thank you.